Greetings from ATO headquarters in Indianapolis. Today, we're going to be talking with Garrett Cornelison, a unique guest who graduated from Simpson College just outside of Des Moines, Iowa, and started on a traditional marketing career, but very quickly decided that really wasn't for him. At age 30, he had the opportunity to take on a 50-state tour, interviewing interesting people every day and taking photographs. In fact, he was an early adopter of Instagram. And those Instagram posts eventually led him to Los Angeles, where his work was noticed, and he became a commercial photographer with companies including Apple, Land Rover, the Lincoln Motor Company, Yelp, and many others. When COVID hit, he decided it was probably time to move back to Des Moines, where he started something very different and very unique. He likes to say that he is very good at making something out of nothing. I'm Wynn Smiley, and this is the ATO Show. Well, Garrett, thank you for joining us today. I know that just hearing a little bit about your story since you were an undergraduate at Simpson College is unique and interesting, and the kind of stories that I think bring some perspective to people who don't have the kind of experiences or who are not willing to take the kind of experiences and risks you took. So I guess just from the onset, we'll certainly get into your ATO, start off with your ATO experience as an undergraduate, but as you were growing up, were you the kind of kid that didn't sort of march in line with everybody else, took risks that other people were not willing to take, or did things differently than other kids were willing to take? How would you describe your childhood?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I that's definitely a through line in my life. Unconventional is probably a good word. I think I was raised by two artist parents who pursued art, at every turn. And I think that was, sort of my North Star was to be creative and to be honest with myself and my passions, and to just chase them down. And that's what I've always wanted to do. So yeah, I think I had two really strong role models in that direction. In fact, it wasn't the procedural go get a business degree, go to work in a cubicle, get your 401k in order and your house, and so I just didn't really have that as a model. So I guess it never occurred to me that was going to be my path. And I think I just have followed opportunities. I think when you recognize opportunities and you're open to them, and you're willing to follow those, man, just life just sort of unlocks in some mysterious, wild, wonderful ways. And I think that's just what I've always tried to do.
So you go to Simpson, and sort of people would say joining a fraternity would stereotypically seem to be the conventional choice. But for you, it was based on your description, it was the ability to move away from the convention of Simpson College and all of the restrictions in dorm rooms and things like that, to a fraternity where you felt more freedom. So explain that.
Yeah, I guess and maybe, maybe that is true for some people on some campuses. At Simpson, it really didn't feel that way. It felt a little, like the alternative choice, like the counter culture. It's a small Greek community at Simpson, and it becomes pretty clear that, like, I don't know, I could live in a dorm with a bunch of new, freshmen that are all sort of learning their way, or I could go live in a house where there's all 4 years, so there's some wisdom there at the top, but you also have peers that you're kind of figuring it all out together too. and you are going to make this thing together. Um, it just felt like there was a little more autonomy, and which comes with risk, and but also greater reward, I think. So I was definitely um, enticed by building something with a group of friends that I didn't feel like I could get anywhere else on campus.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm gonna speed ahead here a little bit. So graduated, went into a traditional marketing role, decided that that wasn't really what your niche was. Left that, started a t-shirt business, and then started getting into Instagram when it was just starting, which led
Mhm.
you to meeting someone who was producing documentaries and took you across 50 states. I lead up to the question of, did any part of the ATO network come into play?
Actually, well, prior to the 50 state journey, my first job out of college was through a connection with an ATO, a Simpson alum. So that was the pipeline to my first marketing job, which I had immediately as I graduated, which is felt really good as a college grad to have a soft landing, and that was a direct uh, um, correlation to an ATO. And then when we were putting together, um, essentially producing our 50 state road trip, we also had to figure out some way to pay for it. So the Greater Des Moines Partnership, which Jay Byers was a part of at the time, gave us some projects to shoot on the road for Des Moines and for Iowa, and I got to fulfill some of that, and he helped, essentially kind of fund what we were out doing. So yeah, definitely ATO's connected some dots for me, even outside of college, which was cool.
Yeah. So, what was it about the marketing job, the traditional marketing job, that did not click with you? And I ask that question because there's going to be some people who are listening who are undergraduates and are in marketing and are thinking about their future. So, this may be helpful insight for them as it relates to what about that that just didn't click with you.
Yeah, absolutely, that's fair. I don't know that it was the marketing or the job even itself. I think when you're making that decision as an 18, 19-year-old kid, I knew I liked advertising, and I knew I liked being creative, and I liked art and commercials, and I, I liked all those things, but I didn't know I didn't know on the real life side of it what that looked like. And when you're starting out in advertising and marketing, you get funneled into, so at the bottom, and you sort of have to work your way up. I quickly discovered that it was going to just be a grind of Excel spreadsheets and marketing, like analytics. And I think I recognized that it was the creative that I was there for, and I wasn't even on the creative floor. That was upstairs. So I would go upstairs, and like on my breaks, and I would just kind of walk around and be like, "This is where I'm supposed to be," and I'm downstairs, like in a cubicle, crunching Excel spreadsheets. And that isn't my brain. That's not that it, that was I didn't think that was going to be part of the gig. This is all math and science stuff, and I was like, this isn't what I thought I was getting into. And so part of that's on me. Like, I guess I just didn't. You don't know what you don't know, and but I got a sense of it. Like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to be, and I could probably work my way into a job there, but who knows when. And the advertising can be, pretty volatile. It's if you lose a big account, then they've got to slash some jobs, and that was kind of happening. This is 2006, 7, leading into the 2008, which obviously the bottom dropped out, and so it was, yeah, it just didn't feel like it was maybe worth investing all that time, when in the back of my head I had this sort of nagging sense that I could work for myself. I could go it alone, and I kind of always wanted to.
Did it feel like a big risk when you said, you know, I don't want to work here anymore, so I'm just going to take off, like, and I'm just going to quit because I don't like this job and go to something else that I'm not quite sure of?
Well, I guess it's worth mentioning. I was in college at Simpson. I spent a semester abroad studying, and I absolutely fell in love with photography, and I fell in love with making images and meeting strangers and taking their portraits, and I fell in love with film and the process and all of those things. And that had been always a side job throughout those first years after college. I was shooting weddings, and I was shooting seniors, and I was doing some commercial work all on the weekends and evenings. And that the desire to do that grew and grew and grew. And when it outweighed the jobs, that I had, when it took up more real estate, more mental real estate, I was like, at that point, I had just randomly met a guy who was traveling the country with his dog, shooting a documentary. He was meeting one person every day, and just a stranger that he would come in contact with, and he would ask them if he could interview them and tell a bit of their story through still images and an audio interview. It would later go on to be National Geographic's Travel Story of the Year. And he would also publish a book of images of his dog standing on various things across the country. I met him when he was doing his first 50-state road trip. And then when that ended, and he was like, I'm going to go out and when I publish this book, I want to go out on a book tour. And he said, we had met in Des Moines, spent a few days together and became fast friends. And then when the opportunity came around to do it all over again, he was like, I'm going around on another 50-state road trip. Do you want to come with me? And that was actually, I'm honestly on my bucket list to go to all 50 states, but I didn't ever expect to do it in the same year.
So what did you glean from that particular time in your life, and what are you still using today that you learned, the wisdom you gained from that kind of experience?
Sure. Well, primarily that the United States is massive. It's so big, and it's so full of amazing people. Most of us don't actually explore the United States. Like, we might have a vacation spot. We go to grandma and grandpa's, or aunts and uncles, and we make those same kind of trips. But you don't, and maybe if you're lucky, your dad is like one of those national park nerds who then, you have to hop in and you begrudgingly travel to all the national parks in a couple summers, if you're lucky, right? And I think there's so many people that I've talked to that don't know geography, that don't know where Iowa even is on a map. They've never been to the Dakotas or Utah. Like, there's no reason to go to those places, and that's just crazy to me. So I think that's really, I learned to be curious, to to ask for help. You sort of like go out on the road, and we would get on Instagram and say, hey, we're going to be in Salt Lake City, the day after tomorrow. Is there anybody there that would like to hang out or get dinner? And people, our inbox would flood with people of like support, of like, come stay at my house, get a home cooked meal. We've got a spare bedroom and a cat, we've got such and such. You can stay anywhere, stay as long as you want. And just the kindness of strangers. It was a really cool time, and it was early in Instagram, and it's a different app now. We don't have to go there, but at the time, it was really a beautiful experience of just people and connection and generosity, and seeing big giant country that we live in that few of us will ever actually really see. And I think that that was such a rare opportunity that there was no way that any job, any 401k, any pension, any, anything could have convinced me not to do. I honestly, to answer your question, I didn't really think about it very hard when the opportunity was presented. I probably should have thought it through a little bit more. Um, go out and spend a year on the road in a truck and a trailer with this guy and his dog who I barely knew, making money somehow. There were a lot of giant question marks. But yeah, you kind of throw caution to the wind and say, this is what I want, and I'll make it work. When you're doing something you're passionate about and you really want it, you'll figure it out. That the net will come, as they say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always tell guys graduating from college, and in fact, I just had the opportunity to do this over the weekend with a group of graduating college students, both men and women, that you really can't make a professional mistake in your 20s, right? I mean, then is the time to take a risk
Mhm.
because it's almost you're going to, if you have to recover because you made a bad decision in terms of getting into something you didn't like, it's very easily recoverable in your 20s, and now's the time. Now's the time to take the risk, and more times than not has been my observation that people have an experience like you did. Like they took the risk, and maybe they shouldn't have. They didn't really think about it too much, but they did. They took the
Mhm.
risk, and it paid off huge dividends.
Yeah. You just kind of go with your gut. And it did pay off. I met people on that road trip that would sort of unlock the next several doors that I would open, and which led me to Los Angeles as a commercial photographer by way of, my Instagram influence. And I essentially made that my job for that year too, was to shoot a photo every day and share it with my audience on Instagram. And I networked and I built a following, one follower at a time. And in those early days, 2013 or something, you could sort of do that. There were a lot of people coming onto to Instagram, and there was just a lot of buzz around it. And Instagram would say, "Hey, follow these people. These are the people we recommend." And you could get 1,000 followers a day. And I just made that my job. I knew I wanted an agent to represent me in the photo world, and this particular agent that I was talking to said, "I can't really market you unless you have 100,000 followers, and brands aren't going to be interested unless you have that many eyeballs." And I said, "All right, well, that's a lot." I had at the time, I think I had 12,000, and I said, "All right, well, then I know what I got to do." And so I worked every day at building an audience so that I could do commercial photography. And Instagram was at the time just seemed like a really great way to get jobs and show jobs, and have my portfolio online and get work. So for like instance, we were shooting for Purina One, and dog. We got a lot of dog food jobs and things like that. So we shot what we loved. We chased down stories that we enjoyed to tell, and then the sponsors and the corporations came following. Because when you say, like, this is what I'm gonna choose to point my camera at, and this is the story I want to tell, you'll not only get the attention of followers, but also brands as well, because they want to borrow some of that legitimacy, or that some of that cool. And yeah, so we got to sort of do both things at the same time, which was really pretty special.
So you both of you were shooting, yes?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was still just kind of learning. I took a little bit of electives in at Simpson, and yeah, I think that's kind of part of the theme too. Is just like a lot of learning on the job. You can't be afraid. You can't say to yourself like, I don't know enough, I'm not ready. I run into people who do that a lot. You know, on that road trip, that 50-state road trip, a lot of people would say like, I would love to do what you guys are doing, but I can't afford it, or I don't have the work, I don't have the portfolio, you know, and there's all these reasons. Or like I talked to people when I was starting companies, like, oh man, I'm going to night school to get my business degree to learn how to open to run a store. I want to have my own whatever. I'm just like, I don't know. I guess I just don't think that way. You just start doing it. There, I think there's this idea that you have to be so prepared um, before you can start, and there's no better way to learn how to operate your own small business than to operate your own small business. Like same with photography. Is just like I don't, I probably don't have the all of the knowledge that I need to do this, but there's no better way to learn than to like go out and do it and stumble and fall on your face and learn. And I think that's how I've always operated, and that's how I ended up opening this store and learning how to sew. I'm still learning, but I just keep learning, and I think I guess that's probably what sets me apart from some other people. Is
Yeah.
just I want to keep learning.
So you then at some point said, "Okay, I'm done with this, or I want to do something different." COVID happened. You moved back to Des Moines, started sewing, opened a shop that you're now. Tell me that progression. How did that all come about?
Okay, so I guess same with marketing and photography. Photography became my job, and then vintage clothing sort of became the side hustle. So I guess that's also a through line. Maybe I've always had lots of interests in and various things going at the same time. So when I was working in LA, I would get a big job maybe once a month, and so I would have a couple weeks off potentially. And I was like, well, I don't want to just sit around. And at that point, I wasn't like shooting photos for fun anymore because it was a job, and it wasn't something I did for fun, regrettably. But it just that was the case. I wasn't shooting just to shoot. So I got into vintage clothing and antiques, and I started selling them at weekend pop-ups. And I think I wanted to meet more people in LA. I wanted to be a part of that community. So I just started signing up for pop-ups, because I had a pretty good collection of vintage for myself, and then I started sourcing other pieces. I would come back here and find pieces in the Midwest and take them out to LA, and they were very popular. Excuse me. And I think I just wanted to I wanted to pursue that a little bit. So that was weekends, and then the pandemic hit, and all productions shut down across the country. So we're talking New York, San Francisco, LA, and there was almost no work to be had. And even if you did, you were on set, everyone was wearing a mask. Even in the photos, like your models had to be wearing masks. So that just wasn't going to work for a lot of brands. And LA is a hard city, even when you're making money, and when you're not, it gets a lot harder. And so I thought after 7.5 years, I thought, okay, that was awesome. That was amazing. Cool opportunities. I met some incredible people, and I thought, okay, that chapter is done, and made made amends, and said, all right, I'm going to pack up and go back. And at the time, I could have gone anywhere, but this is home. I was always been home. And during 2020, I think I think it made sense to be close to home, to be close to family, and all of that, you know, came into focus a little bit stronger. And it was really no question about like where I was going to go. Even though there was maybe a few options, I was like, okay, well, I'm headed back to Des Moines. I don't know what I'm going to do there. There's a little bit of photo work in the city, but I'm not sure that it's my type of work. But I'll go figure it out. I ended up through my agent getting work for with Walmart because our market was still open and their markets had shut down in so many other cities. So I ended up working on social channels for Walmart for a couple of years. And while I taught myself to sew, and because I wanted to repair some of the jeans that I had, and I wanted to learn how clothes were made, and I wanted to be connected to that in some way. So I felt like I needed to learn a little bit of design and learn a little bit of construction and a little bit of pattern making and a little bit of sewing. And came back here, got a sewing instructor, and she's helped me understand, having not gone to school for fashion or any of that, but just having a love for clothes and fashion and design. Um, I've just been slowly kind of learning what I can as I go. YouTube University, they call it, and it's opened up a lot of a lot of cool opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And then I found a space in Des Moines that could shelter me, and I've opened up this 3,000 square foot store in East Village in Des Moines, Iowa, and it feels like I'm right where I'm supposed to be right now. So it's a good feeling. It's been a long time coming too.
So you say it's been a long time coming. So you feel like that this everything that you've been through was leading to this point that in what you're doing now, sort of both on the creative side and then also on the business side, because
Yeah,
you're running a small business.
yeah. Strangely enough, I think because this is where I lived and worked after college in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I was here in the East Village in Des Moines, working in clothes and retail. And then now I've sort of like come full circle back to the scene of the crime, as they say. But I've always wanted to open a retail store. Des Moines doesn't have a lot, especially for men, in terms of reliable places to shop for clothes, and we don't have a lot of cool, just like community places to just hang out, that's what I'm creating here. And yeah, so I think it all, yeah, it took me a long way around to get back here to something that I also love doing. But yeah, this feels like it's kind of was all maybe maybe part of the plan.
Right.
Strangely enough.
So do you think this is the sweet spot for you for a while?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think this is definitely this is definitely where I want to be for a bit. Yeah, and we'll see. I'll know when I start having
Right.
another side hustle creep in, that might be the next leap. I mean, I'd love to do a little writing. I certainly have lots of other interests that I could see myself pursuing as I get older, but yeah, it felt like marketing ran its course, and that's okay. But I use all those skills and all that stuff that I learned, in college today. Just like I do photography. Photography is a very big part of running a small business and marketing and advertising. So none of it has been wasted. So it all just builds, and you just evolve it maybe in some other scope or angle. But it's all been really beneficial. And to bring it back to ATO, just like learning how to run the day to day, and learning how to manage a budget and set goals and honor a tradition and conduct an interview, all of that stuff is like you you sort of get bits and pieces of that being a part of ATO. And I mean, obviously, in anywhere on campus, you'll get some of those things, but I feel like ATO, you get a lot more, and it's all kind of, it feels like it's riding on you a little bit, so there's also comes with it it's a little bit of like, responsibility, and this is, you've got 4 years to make this place better than the way you found it. And I think that's what I've always just tried to, you know that's what I've always, that's what I strive for, is just find the place, make the place a little bit better than you find it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Do you still have an online presence, Garrett?
yeah, I do. I had Instagram, and I had to take a little time apart, but um, You can find me at thedustcollective.co is the store's Instagram handle. But I still keep really kind of amazing as well as my personal profile. And then, yeah, we're building a website. So soon people will be able to access our inventory online, which is a pretty big undertaking. But yeah, we're excited about launching that as well. So,
And if someone is traveling in Des Moines, where can they find your shop?
we're at 509 East 5th in the East Village, which is basically just at the base of the Capitol in a really cool little neighborhood. And it's Des Moines, Iowa, 50309, 509 East 5th Street. Yep.
Garrett, thank you very much for taking the time.
Yeah.
Great
Of course.
story, great experiences that I'm sure our listeners will appreciate and gain great insight. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you.